Today I'm going to be sharing my videos where I brought out my ukulele to tell some of my stories. I have lots of stories and I wanted a fun way to tell them. Okay. Story time. So when I was little, I was working on the farm with my grandpa and we were setting up a break for crew. And I took a drink of the apple juice because I was so thirsty. And after I swallowed it, I was like, ugh! That's the worst juice I've ever drinking. My grandpa took a try and he spit it on the ground. He said, that's fermented. I was like, Grandpa, what's fermented? And he said, that's when juice turns into alcohol. He said alcohol. I was only 12 and I was a sinner. I drinking alcohol. Like, would God forgive me? I broke the word of wisdom. Alcohol. Alcohol. 12-year-old me. First off, I want to put in here, I know I'm not a good singer, and I'm totally fine with that. I enjoy singing. I'm sorry if your ear is used to listening to perfect singers and then you have to listen to me and like get accustomed to a bad singer. Here's the farm that I talked about that I grew up on. Let's see. Yes, I was worried that I was a sinner. It caused me a lot of stress. And now I just look back on that and think that's pretty funny because I wasn't a sinner. I was just like a thirsty 12-year-old. Story time. Once I had this bishop, who instead of laying meetings out at a normal time, would always go 10 minutes over, sharing his ideas. And this one time he got up and he said he'd been thinking about something, and he felt inspired to share with us the church's stance on birth control. So he got over the pulpit and he said this. No vasectomies. He said no vasectomies. You must have babies, no vasectomies. You gotta put your seed inside her wife. She needs babies. And you should have seen all the moms. They were covering their kids' ears because they didn't want to explain to their kids what a vasectomy is because they can barely talk to their kids about sex. I actually thought that was really funny as a Mormon. I wasn't a mother at the time. Me and my husband were newlyweds in a family ward. And just to see everyone's reaction and this bishop talking about vasectomies over the pulpit, like, I thought it was hilarious within Mormonism. I still think it's hilarious outside of Mormonism. It just cracks me up. Also, I want to tell a story. I got a similar reaction out of a sacrament audience because, guys, make sure your kids aren't in the room or cover their ears or turn this off. Like, I'm giving you fair warning. Okay. I got over the pulpit. I talked about how I started working when I was 12 years old and how every morning I had to wake up before Santa comes so that my dad could be there, starting at 12. And I was the oldest of 4. And when my youngest brother turned 12, I'd been doing it for 10 years. And I said this over the pulpit. I said, when my brother turned 12, we just told him that Santa wasn't real. Can you hear where I went wrong? We told him that Santa wasn't real and we slept in. Okay, so this is just supposed to be a funny story to introduce myself, break the ice, get everyone happy before I had to like dive into doctrine. But it didn't go well because there were kids in the room and the parents freaked out because I said over the pulpit, there is no Santa. Santa's not real. So during Relief Society, the sisters came up with a plan, and the Relief Society sister got up and said, okay, guys, we all know what happened in Sacrament. Sister Stephanie feels awful. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go home and we're going to tell our kids, Stephanie's crazy. And I was actually fine with that because I don't want to ruin kids' dreams. But yeah, I was very against Santa most of my life. I've just recently incorporated a little bit of Santa, and I made a Christmas video, I'll put it somewhere, about how we're handling Christmas these years. But also I started incorporating Santa just to break up how devout I was to Jesus during Christmas. And I was so devout, so devout. Okay, here's the next one. Story time. So I was headed out to college and I sat my parents down. I told them that they'd forgotten something. And they're like, what'd we forget? Do you need more plates for college? I was like, no. You know the talk. They're like, the talk? You know the talk. My dad's like, wait a second. You could be having sex at college? And I was like, no, I won't have sex at college. I'll wait until I meet my husband, and then I'll drop out of school and get married in God's temple before I have sex. So my dad, he looked at me and he said, well then I guess you don't need to know. Okay, I actually love that story, and I am not upset at my parents for the way they handled it. People came out in my comments and were like, I don't know, dogging on my parents. And I was like, hey, I like my parents, and this is a funny story. They did the best they could, and I'm pretty happy with my life, so it worked for me. Story time. So John and I, we were engaged, and I brought him home to show him where I grew up. And part of that tour was showing him around my house. And we came to the storage room. And I opened the door, and he said, wow, what is this? This is huge. He's like, this is like a little grocery store inside your house. And I said, well, what'd you grow up with? He said, you mean my pantry? We had a pantry. We had a pantry. We had a pantry. He grew up with a pantry, not a whole room full of food. Okay. Bringing my husband home, and his whole comment, like, this is a little grocery store. Me learning that, like, I just assumed because he was Mormon and I was Mormon that we had similar Mormon experiences, but we didn't actually. A lot of our experiences were different. One, I grew up in a very concentrated Mormon area. He grew up in an area where Mormons were far and few in between. Also, I grew up in a family with devout pioneer heritage. I am a 7th generation Mormon, and he grew up with parents that were converts. So our Mormon experiences were different in some ways. He did not grow up with a whole room of food. Also, whenever I talk about food storage, I get a lot of pushback. Everyone's like, food storage is amazing and we shouldn't dog on it. I give space for that. If food storage works for you and if you like it, then do it. Here are some things that are great about food storage. One, you can buy food when it's at a cheap price. So like if mandarin oranges go on sale, I can buy like a whole case while it's at a cheap price and I'll save money. Number 2, less trips to the grocery store, having things on hand when you run out of things. Maybe that should be 2. Less trips to the grocery store, having things on hand when you run out of things. And then 4, if there is a situation where you either don't have access to food or don't have access to money, you have a stockpile, and that's great. Okay, so there's the pros. Here's the cons. Preferences in what you like to eat can change, and if that happens, you could be stuck with a bunch of food that's going to go to waste. Some people like to eat fresh food, and so stockpiling fresh food really isn't an option because fresh food goes bad. Some people don't have the money to spend a lot on food storage. And so like making them feel like they have to have food storage or bad if they don't have food storage is damaging because it just might not be an option for them. And then, a lot of the food that the church promotes is like barley and wheat kernels. And like you need a wheat grinder to even make that wheat into flour. So a lot of times I see Mormons buying food that they're never going to eat, like dried beans, and they don't know how to cook dried beans, and they don't even like beans, but they're like buying stuff that the church promotes because it has a long shelf life. And then 10 years later, just throwing it away. So those are the pros and cons, and like everyone just make your own choice and own it. Okay. Awesome. If you all want to hear more about my food storage and my emergency kit, I have a video, so go check it out. Story time. I used to be a cup stacker, and I got to go to New York once to sell their product at a national toy fair. And they were the best company. They gave us food and tickets to a Broadway show. And when they gave me my ticket, I noticed it said Wicked. I was so naive and sheltered and uncultured. I said, I won't go to this show. I'll only view family appropriate content. And they said, this is family appropriate content. I was like, you can't trick me. The show's called Wicked. The show's called Wicked. You can't trick me. The show's called Wicked. And I follow Jesus, and I won't go to your show. Okay, so that was my first story that I put out. I was a cup stacker. How did this person get into cup stacking? Well, I tore my ACL my senior year of high school. So I really, at that age, put a lot of value on what I could do and how well I could do it. And I was so excited because cup stacking was something that I could do with my bum leg. And I just got super invested. Like all that time I was putting into basketball and ballroom that I couldn't invest there anymore, I was putting into cup stacking just because it felt good to be able to do something and do it well. After a few months of intensive cup stacking, we went to the world championship. There's this thing called doubles where one person stacks with the left hand and the other person stacks with the right hand. And we got second in the world in our age division. And so later in that year, they invited me to go to New York to sell their product. And I think one main reason they asked me is because I had just turned 18 and they needed someone 18 or older to go because you can't have kids selling these products. You have to be 18 or older. This toy fair is just a bunch of adults playing with toys. There are no kids there. They were amazing. They flew us out there. They fed us all this amazing food. And I'm like this small town farm girl. We hardly ever left my state. And if we did, it was like a 2-hour radius just because we had a lot of responsibility on a farm. A farm's like having a newborn. You can't just like leave your newborn for a long time. It was such a cool experience to go out and experience all these new things that I never experienced. And I told my story about the ticket they brought me to Broadway. Everyone is worried that I didn't go see it. But no, these people are amazing. And they did not give up on me. And they convinced me to go. So I went and I just felt so stupid because it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Like I'd only seen high school small town theater. Like let that settle in for a second. Small town. Okay. And it blew my mind. I mean, these people can sing. These guys are talented. Some of the best entertainers in the world. I remember intermission, I was bawling and they asked me if I was okay afterwards. I'm like, thank you so much for bringing me. I'm like, I am so sorry that I threw such a fit. This is amazing. I love it so much. So I did go see Wicked. Okay, guys, I've got lots more ukulele ones, but I'm going to share them another day. I hope you enjoyed what I shared today. And if you want to go follow me on TikTok, it's great_n_spacious_world. Great and spacious world over on TikTok. If you enjoyed this video, please help me out by liking it, subscribing, adding a comment on the bottom. And I will see you next time, guys. Have a great summer.